Welcome to the Jeffers Brief, only on Contra Radio Network.
Hello again, Intelligentsia. I am John Jeffers. Thanks for listening to this episode. I think you'll like it. Yes. All right. First things first, my friends. Have you guys... I don't know if you guys have heard this story, but I want to put it out there. It was on Gateway Pundit. Apparently, as the Trumps left, the Biden administration took over at the inauguration, of course, and they fired the Trump butler, who I assume they're talking about the usher at the White House. So they fired the guy, right? And then when Lord Biden and his queen showed up at the White House, the doors were locked and there was no one there to greet them or to let them in. Screw the Bidens. And if I've got to tell you now, if you've been paying attention, this guy has no idea, no clue what he's signing or what's going to happen. He has none. Absolutely none. It's an absolute disaster going to happen. But, my friends, because we deal with preppers and patriots here on the Jeffers Brief, well, let's talk a little bit about this. Apparently, now I've been catching bits and pieces of this, and Jeff Charles at RedState.com has put out this great article. It's "Are Biden supporters already feeling voters' remorse?" Before I start, let me tell you something. If you've been in the construction trades and you did not support President Trump, who got you guys working again on projects and whatnot, shame on you. You're a bunch of ingrates, and you deserve to be unemployed. That's true. Case in point. Now, look, we already know that he canceled the XL pipeline. Okay, fine. And with it, the Pipelayers Union had 52,000 union members working on the pipeline. Well, because His Majesty, Lord Biden, has decided to just cancel it, there's 52,000 union workers out of a job. Good paying jobs. Infrastructure building jobs. And of course, the failed mayor, Pete Buttigieg, says, well, they could just go get other union jobs. I got a better idea, pal. You're a failed mayor. Maybe you should go get another job outside of politics, because you suck at it. All right. Anyways, now, what was this published? January 24th. Okay. Yesterday. And who wrote this again? Jeff Charles. RedState.com. This is good, guys. Listen up. It's not even a week into Biden's presidency, and supporters are already expressing voters' remorse. It seems that Orange Man bad only goes so far, doesn't it? The activist media has been trying to manufacture excitement, as I told you last week. Day one, they're already drooling and slobbering on him. I couldn't stand it already, and that's only day one. They've been manufacturing excitement for the newly inaugurated president, but they don't seem to be having much success. Indeed, the reaction from the people who voted for him further shows that they were voting against Trump more than for Biden. Now, left-leaning Twitter users have been complaining about how Biden is spending his first days in the Oval Office taking issue with his seeming inattention to some of his campaign promises. It's not seeming inattention, my friends. He doesn't remember them. He doesn't know what they are. He doesn't. One Twitter user took issue with his decision to increase troops in Iraq and Syria. By the way, why in the hell are we sending troops back in there? My biggest fear of the Biden presidency was foreign policy. In just 3 days, and he's authorized troop escalation in Iraq and Syria. I did not vote for this, did you? Has corporate media mentioned this? Is your rep funded by the mic like mine? She wrote. Oh. Now, others criticize Biden for seeming to walk back his promise of a $15 minimum wage. One user wrote, how do we go from a $15 federal minimum wage to a $15 minimum wage for federal workers. This is feeling very 600 plus 14 equals 2,000 all over again. Dollars he's talking. Another tweeted, so is it true that Biden is not raising the minimum wage to $15 till 2025 and no stimulus checks till the end of February? Why did we vote for this? That comes from Ivan, Black Lives Matter. Even Dr. Naomi Wolf, who served as political consultant for various Democratic candidates, has problems with Biden's stance on lockdowns, she tweeted. By the way, let me take a quick detour here. Michigan Governor Whitmer, Biden's installed, open up the restaurants, indoor dining can begin. And in Newsom, out in California, that Democratic disaster, we're lifting the lockdown, despite the fact, in all the months he's been saying, we got to lock it down, the numbers are too high. The numbers are higher today than they were in December. So it seems to me, by the way, in Chicago, Mayor Beetlejuice herself, indoor dining is okay now. Hallelujah. Imagine that. Just like we conservatives and preppers and patriots have been screaming all along, when Biden's elected and takes office, guess what? All the lockdowns will end. It's all okay. Getting back to it. So Dr. Naomi Wolf tweeted, if I'd known Biden was to open to lockdowns, as he now states, which is something historically unprecedented in any pandemic, and a terrifying practice, one that won't ever end because elites love it, I would never have voted for him. Well, Dr. Wolf, President Trump didn't want lockdowns. But you voted for the guy who's screaming, we gotta wear a mask. Joey, you gotta wear a mask. Yeah. The same guy who says everybody else gotta wear a mask but me. I'm gonna go walking around by people. And then when he's questioned about it, his press secretary, well, he was just celebrating. Jen Psaki, what a piece of shit she is. What a piece of work. Meanwhile, filmmaker and author Mike Cernovich also posted 2 tweets from the Labor's International Union of North America showing their attitude toward the president before he took office and after. Quote, unions are getting exactly what they voted for, he tweeted, and he's right. Absolutely correct. Unfortunately for the Democrats and the activist media, it seems that voters aren't over the moon for their new president. This does not bode well for the Biden administration. If their initial responses to his presidency are any indication, the Democrats have much to fear when it comes to retaining power over both chambers of Congress in 2022 and the White House. This is positive news for Republicans. By the way, you Republican fundraisers out there, stop texting me. You didn't support President Trump, you're not getting another dime out of me. Just saying, that's me. That's what I'm saying. It is doubtful that Biden's term in the Oval Office will get much better. While the Democrats campaigned on being anti-Trump, it won't be enough to govern in that fashion as well. Over the next 4 years, if the GOP allows the Democrats to continue to overstep and push for ridiculous policies, their chances of winning Congress in 2022 and White House in 2024 are looking pretty good. Well, there you go. That's Jeff Charles. So if you don't like what you're getting with him, oh well, too bad. Now, let's hit into a little bit of Prepper Patriot stuff. From shtfplan.com. My friends, if you have not seen this, you gotta listen, intelligentsia. You guys are smart. First of all, you're smart enough to listen to this show, the Jeffers Brief, and some of the other shows like the Prepper Guy with Mark Boyle. Good job. If you have your own business, you're in business for yourself, want to start a business, I strongly suggest you listen to Don Lowry on the Marketing Podcast, also on Contra Radio Network. Guys, you won't be sorry about it. Because the thing of it is, Don's been in internet marketing since the internet decided to become big stuff back in the 90s. He knows things, stuff I don't know, but he knows, and he's done pretty well for himself. So I suggest you listen to him if you guys are in business, think about going into business for yourself, that kind of thing. All right. Let's talk about Biden's presidency. Will it be a catalyst for secession and perhaps civil war? My friends, before I start, I want you to understand something here. I need you to understand what it is I'm really talking about to you here. You'll go on social media, which is, of course, the toilet of the internet. And there'll be people out there screaming for civil war, civil war. My friends, look, I don't like what I've seen either. And I believe our republic, our constitutional republic, is in danger? I do. However, before we jump off the cliff and leap into the civil war, we need to exhaust every avenue available to us. Civil War 2.0 is the last thing I'm advocating for before we exhaust every other avenue. Look, I don't like the libs. I don't like the Democrats any more than you do. I think they're dangerous. I think they're not all that smart. By the way, I have to ask you a question. In what world, other than the make-believe world that the liberals live in with their progressive and Antifa supporters and everybody else, do they really think they're going to, one, be able to outfight us and outgun us in a civil war? Do they really truly believe the military will stand by? My guess, this is my prediction, God forbid, I hope it never comes true. If there is, we do end up in a civil war, I do believe the military will be split down the middle. You will see units going to one side or the other. My friends, that's what I think. And I also believe if that does happen, there's every chance Canada will also be pulled into it. I believe the western provinces of Canada have had about enough of the liberal nonsense on the east side of their country, and they're tired of it. But that's just me. And I hope I'm wrong. I hope it doesn't happen. There is a way to defeat the Democrats and everything else. Oh, and when I talk about the Democrats, I'm also talking about their little lapdogs. They're trained monkeys in the mainstream media. Oh, yes. They go down too. Be prepared for the onslaught of progressive, Marxist plans being put out there. For the next 2 years, we as conservatives must, without question, fight to support our Constitution, fight to save our constitutional republic. Because the next 2 years, those clowns in the Democratic Party, they're going to run the table. They got Lord Biden, who has no clue what he's doing. First of all, I doubt he even knows where the hell he is every night. Second of all, they're going to run the Senate by slim margin, unless they could get Joe Manchin and maybe another Democrat to side with them. The House of Representatives, they hold a slim edge there. My friends, the next 2 years, the onslaught's coming. They're going to push everything they can. Let's get to it. Max Slavo. This article it was originally published by Brandon Smith at altmarket.us. And this is what he writes. He says, over the past few months, I've written a handful of articles that discuss what would happen if Joe Biden actually entered the White House and launched his administration. My initial belief was that Trump would refuse to concede and that this would be a trigger for national chaos blamed on conservatives. But I've also noted that Biden's entry is almost just as disruptive, as it sends a signal to the political left that it is open season on anyone that disagrees with their ideology. Can't argue with that statement. Of course, conservatives are not going to simply sit back and be purged and abused. They're going to strike back. And this sets the stage for a number of events and outcomes, some of which are completely unpredictable, even for the establishment globalists. By the way, Marbles, McConnell, yeah, he needs to go. Voters in Kentucky, I know you listen to this show. You got to find somebody else. He's done. Now, first, though, we need to address how Biden and the globalists are trying to create chaos so that they can then demand their own brand of order, if you follow me. So, in his article, A Biden Presidency Will Mean a Faster U.S. Collapse, published in October, he outlined why the outgoing economic crisis will accelerate in the wake of a Biden takeover. More specifically, he predicted that Biden would implement a federal COVID lockdown, probably within the first year of his presidency, similar to the level 4 lockdowns implemented in Europe and Australia. Now, Biden may lure Americans into complacency with promises of relief and fewer restrictions in his first couple of months. But he will then use the rather convenient news of COVID mutations to bring in harsher mandates. My friends, I know a couple people who are all worked up over this COVID mutations. The bottom line is, it's not any more deadly than what's out there now. It just means you're able to contract it more easily. That's all it means. Now, such a lockdown, if Americans submit, would mean an even larger spike in unemployment, a loss of hundreds of thousands of small businesses, as well as a huge loss in tax revenues for some states, mostly blue states. Here in the tyranny state of Illinois, the Democrats are screaming they want to increase the income tax. Newsflash for Springfield, you morons. You've been to the well so often, anybody that works has left. They're trying to get the hell out of here. You can't come to the well anymore. There's no more money to be had. Idiots. Another scenario is that Biden leaves the lockdowns in the hands of state governments. Oh, great. We're going to leave Illinois in the hands of that fat bastard Pritzker. Are you kidding me? Oh, God, I got to get out of here. But pursues a nationwide program for medical passports. The passport, of course, would require people to take the vaccine and accept contact tracing apps on their phones, meaning 24/7 surveillance on the public. Why don't you just sew a gold Star of David on me? Because that's what you're asking. Idiots. At least 30% of Americans have said in polling that they will refuse the vaccines outright. Another 60% have said they are wary of the vaccines and need proof of their effectiveness. Well, okay, fine. Look, I'm going to go here. Most of you don't have a medical background. So when you read about the effectiveness of it, are you really going to understand what the hell you're reading? Number 2, this drives me bonkers, guys. I know some of you are going to disagree with me, but it drives me crazy when I see people wearing their mask and they got their nose hanging out of the mask. I guess my point is, what the hell is that going to do for you? Do you wear your underwear with your dick hanging out the top of the underwear? I mean, seriously. That's about how stupid they look. It drives me nuts. Look, I was in the military. If you were in the military, you had the biological and chemical weapons training, nuclear training, that we all had in basic training. So I was taught and drilled, use the equipment properly. Use it properly. It will work. Am I saying mask work? What I'm saying is, at least wear it right. For the love of God, don't look freaking stupid and lazy. Okay, got it out of my system? Got it out of my system. I'm drinking iced tea tonight. We're waiting for a snow blizzard to bear down on us tonight, so I don't know. Meanwhile, so the medical passport will lead to millions of people being denied participation in the mainstream economy, and collapse happens anyway. In other words, the elites are going to try to hold the economy hostage while telling the public that if they don't accept medical tyranny, it'll be our fault if the system breaks down. The economic crisis, however, started long before the pandemic, long before Biden, and long before Trump. It has been building since the credit crash of 2008. In the 12 years, the Federal Reserve and other central banks have been pumping out trillions in stimulus while encouraging nonstop debt accumulation. Right before the beginning of the pandemic, the U.S. was suffering from the highest corporate debt in history, the highest consumer debt in history, as well as the highest national debt in history. What we are witnessing right now is the final phase of a collapse scenario that was more than a decade in the making, and Biden is about to help finish the job. Hell, he doesn't know what the hell he's doing. You want me to sign what? Okay, I'll sign it. Hey, look, I signed an executive order. Hey. Really, Joe? What'd you sign? I don't know. You see that picture of Joe looking around like he's confused? And Kamala Harris is like this to him, trying to bring him, focus! Focus, you old white man! Yeah, that's a great picture. So it says a lot. All right, but Biden will no doubt seek to hyperinflate the dollar in the name of offsetting the losses and keep things afloat for a short time. But the real agenda will be to trigger price spikes in goods, as well as eventually killing the dollar altogether. No amount of stimulus will stop the crash that has already been set in motion. The bailout measures from this point are on a kabuki theater, a show put on for the masses to make us believe that the government and the banks did everything they could to save us. The elites have no intention of stalling or stopping the collapse. Their great reset demands it. If you believe that the Democratic Party is the party of the working man, the small guy, you are a crackhead. If anything this past election proved, President Trump's Republican Party, they have become the party of the working man. Now, over initial assumptions would be that Biden would then take the blame for the economic crisis, but it appears that the establishment is going to set up a Herbert Hoover narrative and lay all the blame squarely on Trump and conservatives. Now, in the past, we have noted that Trump's trajectory was very similar to Herbert Hoover's in that he was a business mogul and Republican that pushed for corporate tax cut policies, also extensive tariffs. Hoover also served only one term, taking the blame for the crash of 1929 and the advent of the Great Depression, even though the crash was primarily caused by the Federal Reserve's ultra-low interest rates and easy money, followed by a series of rate hikes, a fact which former Fed Chairman Ben Bernanke would later openly admit to in 2002. This launched the three-term dominion of Franklin Delano Roosevelt, one of the most communistic presidents in our history, and the initiator of socialist programs, which have since buried the American public in quadrillions of dollars in unfunded liabilities. Biden's latest statements indicate he will introduce numerous executive orders to correct the mistakes of the Trump administration, thereby implanting the idea that whatever happens next is Trump's fault. The reset globalists and their central banking partners will have to bring down the U.S. economy very quickly under a Biden White House. Why? Because if they wait, or if they try to drag out the collapse and the worst happens a few years down the road, Biden and the globalists will get the blame. They must crash the old world order now so that Trump and conservatives can be saddled with the consequences. The strategy seems to be this. Demonize conservatives as much as possible, as quickly as possible, so that our purge from social platforms can be rationalized. When we are incapable of defending ourselves in public sphere because we have been removed from the internet, the establishment and leftists can blame us for everything going wrong. The public would have no access to any other points of view or contradictory facts and evidence because the alternative media will be gone. We become the monsters, the boogeyman, and the source of all American suffering. We didn't fall into the trap of supporting martial law measures during BLM riots, so this must be Plan B. Will their plan work? He doubts it. Just as the globalists roll out the pandemic lockdowns and medical tyranny is failing to gain traction in the U.S., as huge numbers of people refuse to take the questionable vaccines. He suspects millions upon millions of Americans are already savvy to the propaganda schemes of the establishment and will not buy in. But that does not mean the elites won't try it anyway. Now, in early November, in issue number 47 of his newsletter, The Wild Bunch Dispatch, he wargamed the Biden scenario extensively, concluded that if he was to enter the White House, It would have to be followed by a massive erasure of conservative media platforms on the internet. He stated that, quote, if Biden does indeed enter the White House and take control of the presidency, expect certain consequences right away. A complete full-spectrum censorship campaign of conservative news sources will be undertaken by tech companies and government. There is no way Biden and the Democrats could keep control of the situation while conservatives are able to share information in real time. Do not be surprised if web providers suddenly start kicking conservative sites off their servers, just as BitChute, it's a YouTube alternative, was kicked off their server for 24 hours on election night. End quote. This is already happening, and Biden hasn't even stepped foot into the role of commander-in-chief yet. Well, he did a week ago. The coordinated effort by big tech to remove Parler, a twatter alternative, from the web completely was not all that surprising. Luckily, Parler will be back up and running by the end of the month, but the censorship campaign is only going to get worse from here on. I talked about the onslaught. That's part of it. Biden will support and defend the censorship efforts by big tech, and the fascist marriage between government and the corporate world will be complete. To summarize, the globalists have to silence us before they can effectively demonize us. The truth is on our side. Facts and logic are on our side. They can't win the war of ideas if we are allowed to speak. This is why they're so desperate to silence us. Now, sweeping gun control measures will be issued by Biden, but only after the conservative purge from the internet is close to finished. If conservatives are isolated from one another in terms of communication, this makes it hard to organize a defense against aggressive gun confiscation. Biden will most likely try to exploit red flag gun laws first. This will allow federal agencies to declare anyone to be a threat to public safety without due process and have their guns taken away preemptively. There is an obvious outcome to all these actions, and we don't think it's far-fetched to suggest that conservative counties and states will demand secession. At the very least, conservatives are going to continue to relocate to red states and red counties, just so they can continue to do business and make a living without government interference. There is no way that most conservative-controlled states or counties are going to submit to federal lockdown mandates or medical passports. And economies in the conservative regions are going to remain stable because of this. White, blue states are going to crumble. Okay? Biden will seek to retaliate against conservative-controlled areas of the country in response. Now, there comes a point when it is impossible for those that value freedom, logic, and reason to live side by side with those that are irrationally obsessed with control. The American constitutional framework in particular was designated to prevent collectivism from overriding individual liberties. But if the system is sabotaged through subversion and the Bill of Rights is violated, then maintaining the system is no longer plausible. The best option for a number of reasons is to separate. Secession is often referred to as running away from a cultural problem, but this is an ignorant way of looking at it. We are reaching a stage right now in the U.S. where it will be virtually impossible to voice political concerns without risking retribution. If you are conservative, you will be targeted. You will be canceled. If conservatives and moderates migrate away from leftist-controlled areas and congregate in red states or red counties, then it will be difficult for leftists to attack them for voicing their views. If your employer is a conservative, then he's not going to care if the leftist mob demands you be fired. If you own a business in a conservative community, then the people that live there will continue as your customers regardless of what leftists say about you. Chick-fil-A, for example. Conservatives and moderates must start to physically separate from the political left. We must remove ourselves from the blood-sucking parasites that have attached themselves to us. This allows us to remain free to think and speak as we like, and it takes all power away from leftists to hurt us by disrupting our means by making a living. Secession is a more extreme measure, but it will become necessary if leftists refuse to accept that we are no longer participating in their games of fear and subterfuge. Leftists are collectivists by nature, and collectivists see people as property. Walking away is not an option in their minds. So, though we might successfully separate, this would only be the beginning of a battle. The important thing is to first make sure that conservatives know that there are places they can go where their civil rights are valued and defended. If conservatives feel completely isolated and alone, many will give up, go dark, and pray they are not discovered. This is unacceptable. The advantage of secession is clear. By separating, Conservatives force the enemy to come to them on the ground they have prepared. The leftists will be the aggressors by default. They will have to try to present the situation otherwise, but it won't matter. We'll have the high moral ground as well as the superior strategic position. There are multiple narratives that will be used to demonize the secession movement beyond the terrorism angle. In particular, I think the government and the media will try to tie secession to foreign entities. In other words, they will claim the secession movement is being funded or supported by Russia or some other foreign power. This is what almost every government in history has done when faced with a viable secession or rebellion that could threaten their control. They accuse the people that want to separate of being agents of evil outsiders. It doesn't matter. Conservatives cannot live with leftists. Their occultism and zealotry have made it impossible. And we will not live under a globalist tyranny built around their reset agenda. Separation allows us to consolidate for defense and protects us economically. It is the only way to ensure that we remain free. The globalists and the leftists will try to stop us. They can't help themselves. They are insane after all. This will lead to a war many of us have been expecting for quite some time. At the very least, with separation and secession, we will be in the best possible position to stop them. If we remain isolated from each other, the fight will be over before it even begins. Oh, all right. Anyways. Well, so much fun. Think about it. Think about it, my friends. Now, if you live in a red state and you have, say, a Democrat governor, you got to get rid of him. Or you got to isolate him, put him on ice. Somehow, some way, make him ineffective. Now, there are people leaving California to go to red states. We know that. They are bringing their bad voting habits with them. For example, look at Austin, Texas. It may be the capital of the state of Texas, but it's also become a blue region, blue territory. Think about that. Oh, my friends, where am I? Oh, all right. What else do I want to do here? You know what? I think that's what I want. I want to leave it here for right now. I'm going to leave it there, my friends. I want to thank you for listening to the Contra Radio Network. Myself, John Jeffers, here at the Jeffers Brief. Please, tell your friends. Pass the word. Share this. I'd appreciate it. All right. Until next week. Oh, by the way, there will not be a marketing podcast this week from Don Lowry. He has become a grandfather as of yesterday. He can't sleep. Poor Don. I can't sleep. Baby keeps me up. Great. Just what the world needs. A mini Don Lowry in the making. Wonderful. Okay. Congratulations, Donnie. All right. Until then, I'm John Jeffers. We'll see you next week unless something really craps up. And we did see the Democrats deliver their articles of impeachment tonight. What a joke. So the people who are the alleged victims are the ones going ahead. They're going to judge all this. Yeah, right. You know what? It's coming, my friends, and they're manufacturing. I just laid it out for you. Very interesting scenario that was laid out for you tonight. So until then, next time it is what it is. Fine, we'll see you next week. If something craps up as usual, well, I will be back before next week. Until then, I'm John Jeffers. Be safe, be alert, be vigilant. We will see you, my friends. Thanks for listening.